What up? What up? We got another IDP video for you guys. If it's your first time here, hit subscribe because you know that there are very few people doing IDP videos for the crew. But I've been playing in IDP leagues for damn near 20 years, and I'm the one bringing the heat. And the waiver wire video for IDP is always one of the most popular of the week, so this comes every single week. I also have defense and special teams if you guys play in those leagues, but fuck team defense, am I right? And then we also got every offensive position waiver wire video available as well. I'm starting off with the linebackers, as I always do. Then we're going to get to defensive linemen and then to defensive backs. I try to mention guys that are available in leagues that might be a little bit more shallow with IDP. So those would be guys who are like rostered in like 20% of Yahoo leagues or so for the redraft. And then I try to mention guys rostered in less than 5% of leagues. So those more guys who should be available in even like some of the bigger redraft leagues. And then I always try to highlight a couple people who are 0% rostered as well, because that is going to be for like even Dynasty. You might even be able to find these guys in Dynasty. And here we go. I'm starting with Henry Tuatu, Mr. Henry H2O. He's the second guy over there to Aziz Al-Shair. 15 points in week 1, 31 in week 2. He had 9 solo tackles. He had 13 total tackles. He did mix in a sack as well, mixed in a tackle for loss. He's doing really solid over there. Teams, a lot of running. They want to do a lot of running on the Texans because the Texans do have a pretty solid secondary. That's what we've seen in the first couple games against them. And go pick him up.
Pick him up.
He is rostered in, it's 1% of redraft leagues. So this is someone who should be readily available. Next guy here, Robert Spillane, linebacker on the Raiders, might not be as available for you. He's rostered in 21% of Yahoo redraft leagues. 30 points this past week, 8 solos and 2 assisted tackles, and he had a big INT as well. In your deeper leagues, he's probably not available, but if he's available, you're in a more shallow league, go pick him up.
Pick him up.
Always making a lot of points. As of right now, he is averaging 24.5 points per game. Now, this guy should be readily available in your redraft leagues, maybe even in some of your dynasty leagues. Blake Cashman on the Vikings. They brought him over to be a starter. And Yvonne Pace, I know a lot of people are like super excited about Yvonne Pace, but Cashman plays 90% or more of the snaps when Yvonne plays around like 70% of the snaps. In week 1, he only had 10 points, not so good. But week 2, killed it, 36 total points, 5 solo tackles, and 13 total tackles. He had a sack, mixed in 3 passes defended as well in an IDP 1, 2, 3. Those are worth 3 points, even worth more than a tackle. So Blake Cashman,
pick him up.
He's playing a lot of snaps, and that's one of the ththings that we love. And he's getting pretty much 90% plus of the snaps at 89 in week 1, and then over that in week 2, he had 99% of the snaps in week 2, and it's probably going to be the norm for him. And look at his snap number. He played 69 total snaps in week 2.
69, dudes.
Go get him. Here's another guy who should be available in your redraft leagues, Jermaine Pratt. So he's been a solid staple of the Bengals for a few years, especially in IDP. And week 1, 16 points, just solid, very solid. And then in week 2, 30 points versus the Chiefs. He had 16 total tackles this week. He's got that tackling fuel, let me tell you.
Tackling fuel.
He had 7 of those were solos, and then also mixed in a forced fumble and a fumble recovery. So we like those kind of things. And that's what brought his points all the way up to 30. But I think that if you need linebacker help, most of the time, him and Logan Wilson, they're both having very decent, at least decent games over there. And teams, because of Joe Burrow, they're always going to try to run on him. What should we do?
Pick him up.
Let's do it. Now, this guy, 10% rostered in redraft leagues, Tremaine Edmonds on the Bears. Not going to be available in your deeper IDP leagues for sure. But if you play in a little bit of a more shallow one, I feel like you could do a lot worse than Tremaine Edmonds. Everybody who's playing against him has seemed to run the ball a bunch. In week 1, not too much going on with him. But week 2, they let him get after the quarterback a little bit. He ended up getting a sack. He had 11 total tackles. 8 of them were solo. So I think if you're in a little bit of a more shallow league, I would pick him up.
Pick him up!
A lot worse linebackers you could target right now. Got a Giants linebacker here, Micah McFadden. Last year came onto the scene, a little bit more solid, had a pretty disappointing rookie year. And week 1, he's hurt, doesn't even play, probably got dropped in a bunch of places because I see he's only 2% rostered in Yahoo redraft leagues. And the Giants, they suck. And teams are usually grounding and pounding. And when like teams are beating them, they're going to run on them more. And that's probably going to be a situation for them a bunch where teams are just running and running on them while they're trying to run down the clock. So Micah McFadden, yeah, 13 total tackles. 7 of them were solo. He mixed in a sack this week. That's probably not going to be the norm for him. But yeah, Micah McFadden, go pick him up.
Pick him up!
And just remember, every IDP league is different. And there's some leagues that start 1 player. There's some that start 9 or 10 or even more. So if you guys want like specific answers about your league, make sure you go to 420crew.com. Go join the crew. You get direct access to me. Sign up as a superstar tier member or higher. That's the best thing that you can do for your fantasy football life. I am telling you, because there might be guys available in your league that don't even make my video because they shouldn't be available to pick up in your league. So that's why you want to hit me up personally, because I'm trying to do things for the masses here, but you want the individual help because that's how you're going to win your individual league. Let's do it. Next guy I'm mentioning here, Pat Jones. Who? Pat Jones on the Minnesota Vikings, killing it in back-to-back games so far. 24 points in week 1, 28 in week 2. Now, for anyone who's playing on Sleeper, he has DL eligibility only, so I am going to re-mention him when we talk about DLs. But for everyone who plays on Yahoo or ESPN, they have him listed as a linebacker only. Very confusing. I know. It took me like 5 minutes to find this guy because I'm looking in the linebackers. Could not find him. I was like, do they not have him on Sleeper? Yes, they do, but they only have him listed as a defensive lineman. When we're talking about people to pick up, who? Pat Jones. A lot of these guys have low percentage of rostership. Here's another guy. Only 2% rostered in Yahoo redraft leagues. David Long for the Miami Dolphins, and 15 points in week 1, 24 points in week 2. In week 2, 9 of those tackles were solos, killing it. And you already know now that the Dolphins probably are going to be playing from behind a lot, there's probably going to be more running happening on these guys. So that means someone like David Long's production could even be going up. So what are we going to do?
Pick him up!
Let's do it. Mr. Azeez Al-Shaair, who's someone who you definitely have to pick up.
Pick him up!
He's 20% rostered, so he just barely makes the cut. So if you're in a little bit of a shallow league and he's available, go do it. 10 points in week 1, 26 in week 2. They got Minnesota, the Jags, and Buffalo over the next 3 weeks. So some solid games. So pick him up. Now on Sleeper, this guy only has DL eligibility, but for those who play on Yahoo and ESPN, he has dual eligibility. I'm talking about Jared Verse on the Rams. 16 points in week 1, 22 in week 2, 6 solo tackles and a forced fumble, 7 total tackles. So if you need some D-line help over there, Jared Verse might be available. And I'm sure he's rostered in the deeper leagues, but if he's available,
pick him up.
Now, Josie Jewell, if you're in a little bit of a more shallow league, he might be available for you out there. I know deeper leagues, there's probably no way he's available. But 13 points in week 1 and 22 in week 2. Like, this is the kind of stuff that he's going to be doing over there for the Carolina Panthers. 11 total tackles. 8 of them were solo this week. He's going to be doing this week after week. So if somehow he's available,
pick him up.
One more Carolina linebacker, Shaq Thompson. Teams are going to be beating up on the Panthers so much and running on them so much that both Josie Jewell and Shaq Thompson can both throw down 20-point games. So if he's available in your league,
pick him up.
a little bit more available than Josie Jewell, 14 total tackles in this past week, and 8 of them were solo. So yeah, go pick Shaq Thompson up if you need linebacker help. All right, as we continue the linebackers, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. Turn on the notifications and leave a comment. Drop a comment. Devin Lloyd. Man, Devin Lloyd, he's been one of my favorite linebackers ever since he came in as a rookie. 18 points in week 1, 23 points in week 2. Just a jack of all trades. And even though he's playing right next to Foyo Lacoon, he still puts up decent points week after week. Only 5 of his 8 tackles were solo. I guess that's more than half. And then he did mix in a forced fumble. But he just always figure out how to get somewhere between 15 and 25 points. So we love him for it. Go pick him up.
Pick him up.
Probably more shallow leagues he'll be available. Deeper leagues, no way he's available. Now, this guy's so nice. I'm going to talk about him twice. This is the first one. Van Ginkel, Andrew Van Ginks. Told you to pick him up last week.
Pick him up.
Telling you to pick him up this week on Sleeper. You can play him in the DL or the LB spot. On Yahoo, you can only play with him in the linebacker spot. So wherever you are, I would still pick him up.
Pick him up.
2 good games back to back, 29 points in week 1, 22 in week 2, and he's had a sack in each of the games so far. Going up against the Texans, CJ's taking some sacks. Going up against Green Bay the week after that, and Jordan Love probably won't be back by then. And then you got the Jets, who, I mean, we see them giving up some sacks, so he's got a couple good games ahead. Van Ginks, get him in your lineup.
Pick him up.
Here is my last linebacker to mention on the waivers. We're going to be covering defensive linemen next and then defensive backs. So stick around for all the players. Denzel Perryman, very available in your leagues. And now, because Junior Colson got hurt, if he misses any time, that just means a higher snap percentage for Denzel Perryman, who is already playing a higher percentage than Colson anyways, but Colson being out just means more for him. He had 21 points in week 2. Now that he got more snaps, he had 65% of the snaps as opposed to 50% in week 1. 5 of his 7 tackles were solo, and then he mixed in a big time sack as well. They got Pittsburgh this week, and Pittsburgh's going to be running. They got KC the week after that. 2 good games right before their bye week. So if you need someone to stream at linebacker or whatever, or maybe you had a couple injuries, you could do a lot worse than Denzel Perryman playing on the Chargers. And if Colson doesn't play, higher percentage for him. Let's get into the defensive linemen now. Here we go with the defensive lineman. And the first guy that I picked, he's got dual eligibility at the DL and the LB. Will McDonald IV. Oh, yeah. Super hyped last year when they drafted him, and a lot of nothing until right now. 3 sacks and a forced fumble. Like, these are the type of games that they really thought that he was going to have when they drafted him. Someone who's rostered in 0% of leagues, I feel like I might have even dropped him in a dynasty or 2 here or there. And this week, that 35 total snaps was 53% of the snaps. So he's just hovering right around that 50%. The first week, it was 49% snaps. So not someone who I'm like super excited about starting right away, because he barely plays like half the game, but someone to get on your radar, number 1, or if you play in a dynasty league and he's available, someone you might want to pick up and just throw on your bench over there. Maybe this is the game that finally starts heating up the career of this kid. Next guy I'm talking about here on Sleeper, he's got the dual eligibility. On everywhere else, he only has linebacker eligibility. Adafi Owa on the Ravens. He last week 1, 85% of snaps. Week 2, 67% of snaps. Not the best if you just look at those stats and that's it. But in week 1, he had 8 points versus the Chiefs. And then in week 2 versus the Raiders, he had 34 points. So out there killing it, 2.5 sacks. The 4th year for him, and he's disappointed like along the way. Like, I mean, he's been decent in like real life, but for fantasy, he's disappointed. This is someone that we're going to look at and speculate. I would get him on the radar on Sleeper if he's available. I'd probably go pick him up.
Pick him up,
because you can play him at the DL, and I feel like DL is just so slim that a guy like that, he will have value. All right, I mentioned this guy in the linebacker spot, but on Sleeper, he has DL eligibility only. Pat Jones. Who? Pat Jones. playing right around 50% of the snaps. He's got 2 sacks in each of the first 2 games, and he has a forced fumble also in week 2. So just being very efficient with everything. And if you need a D lineman on sleeper, I would go pick him up. I probably wouldn't pick him up in a linebacker spot because we want guys who play more percentage of snaps, guys more consistent. But on sleeper in the DL, you could do a lot worse than Pat Jones right now. So I would go pick him up.
Pick him up!
On sleeper, though, on sleeper. And Van Ginkel, I told you he's so nice. I'm going to talk about him twice. Here's the second time. Snap percentages. Week 1, 58% of snaps. Week 2, 81% of snaps. So already a big jump from week 1 to week 2. Snap percentage wise, he did take a hit, 29 points in week 1. He did score that touchdown, though. That added to the points. Week 2, 22 points. Van Ginks, go pick him up.
Pick him up!
I talked about this guy last week. I'm going to mention him again this week. Keon White. He has 4 total sacks in this season. He plays for the New England Patriots, for those who don't know, and over 80% of snaps in each of the first 2 weeks. And this week, he had 7 total tackles as opposed to last week having 4. Last week, 32 total points. This week, 22 total points. I don't think a lot of people know who this guy is, so go pick him up.
Pick him up!
While he is rostered in a very low percentage of leagues, only rostered in 10% of leagues. That's a lot since last week. I feel like last week it was a lot less than that. So go pick him up because D linemen, they're not a dime a dozen like the linebackers. D linemen are a little bit tougher to come by. Trey Hendrickson. Now, if you play in a deeper IDP league, he's probably not available. But if you play in a more shallow IDP league, this is a solid defensive lineman to go out there and get. 14% rostered in Yahoo redraft leagues. He had 2 sacks this week, 27 total points, mixed in 4 solo tackles as well. So Trey Hendrickson, if he's somehow available,
pick him up.
Go grab him. And just for the people who may have jumped to defensive linemen from the linebackers, Jared Verse, I'm going to throw him out there again. 16 points in week 1, 22 in week 2. Already has a sack and a forced fumble on the season. He had 7 total tackles this past week. 6 of them are solo. So Jared Verse.
Pick him up.
Carl Granderson, his team is killing it right now, and he was really solid in week 2. He had a sack and a half against the Cowboys. This past week, he played 77% of the snaps. If he's playing 3/4 of the snaps and he's getting after the QB, that is someone that we like going up against the Eagles and the Falcons over the next couple weeks. And yeah, if you need D-line help, do it.
Pick him up.
Now, here's a real deep dive for you guys. Alex Wright on the Cleveland Browns. He jumped up in snap percentage from 30% to 55%. And that's the kind of trajectory that we like. And he got a sack this week. 17 points, 4 points in week 1. So a huge improvement. And they rotate guys over there in Cleveland a lot. And if he starts becoming a guy who's more than 50%, if he becomes a guy who's used more than 50% of the snaps on a constant basis, I think it's a good pickup, like in advance, because Cleveland, it seems like they're always going to be on the field. And so if they're rotating a lot more and he becomes more of a piece, let's do it.
Pick him up.
And that's the last D lineman. Hit that subscribe button if you have not. And we're getting into defensive backs to close this out. Thank you for continuing down this IDP waiver wire journey. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. Turn on the notifications. And let's talk about Jason Pinnock for the Giants, who had a good game after having a mediocre game 1. Washington. Seems like Washington's going to give it the booty on offense and on defense. Pinnock, he's only rostered 1% of redraft leagues, so you can probably go pick him up in a lot of different places. He had 9 total tackles, 8 of them solo, and then he mixed in 2 sacks as well. So that's why he got 35 points. I doubt this is going to be a normal thing, but if the tackles stay around where they are, it's going to be a solid performance from a safety week in and week out. And the Giants, they suck, so they're going to be on defense a lot. I'm going to stick with the Giants while we're here because we know that their team is garbage. And when your team sucks, you're going to have guys who shiny piece of doo-doo, baby. And we got Andrew Phillips or Drew Phillips, whatever they have him listed as. And he went, I don't know if you guys heard, like this kid, he's a rookie. I don't know what they really thought they were going to get from him right away, but last week barely played. Yeah, he played like 29% of the snaps, only 16 total snaps, like you can see here. He got 12 points, forced a fumble, got a couple tackles. It was real solid. And then in week 2, he goes from 16 total snaps to 66 total snaps, 92% snaps. So this kid is going to be on the field a lot. And back-to-back games, 12 points in week 1, only getting a small percentage of snaps. Then he jumps up 30 total points. He mixed in a sack. He had 12 total tackles. 7 of them were solo. He had 2 tackle for losses in there. So, yeah, Drew Phillips, I think you could do a lot worse than him right now, and he's a cornerback. But if he's going to be they're going to be getting him to rush the quarterback, and he's getting a lot of tackles. Yeah, he's probably going to be the guy that we're going to want to lean on over here if there was a cornerback to actually lean on. Patriots safety Kyle Duggar. Man, I've been a fan of Kyle Duggar ever since he came into the league a handful of years ago. And I was telling a bunch of people to draft him. Week 1, 14 points. Not amazing, but he's handling biz. And then in week 2, 29 points. Totally killing it over there. I know they went into overtime. He probably got a couple extra tackles or whatever, but he got a sack. He got 9 total tackles. I don't know why it says 8 here, but he had 8 of them were solo. So if he's available, this is probably going to be in a more shallow league that he's available. Go pick him up.
Pick him up.
I got to mention Nick Cross again this week after mentioning him last week. So Julian Blackmon ended up not playing. Sorry for anybody who picked him up and then he didn't play. Hopefully you saw that news. But Nick Cross, 22 points in week 1, 25 in week 2, 15 total tackles in week 2, 10 of them were solo. Those are the kind of numbers that we like out of a safety. So I told you last week to go pick him up. If you're still contemplating picking him up, do it.
Pick him up.
Next guy here, Mr. Benjamin St. Justy, whichever way you pronounce it. Solid in week 1, 13 points, 24 in week 2. He's a corner, but teams are throwing all over Washington right now, and he got 5 tackles this past week. He got 6 solos this week. He mixed in a forced fumble. He had 24 total points. So if you play in a league where you start cornerbacks, he's someone that you go pick up.
Pick him up.
And even if it's DBs, like as bad as Washington is right now, they're going to be on the field a bunch for defense. So I like him. Go pick him up. He's readily available. Another guy who notched 24 points this week, also had 11 tackles, 8 of them solo, Jordan Whitehead for the Tampa Bay Bucks. 15 points last week. Antoine Winfield was there last week. This week, Antoine Winfield's not there. He throws down 24 points. So Antoine Winfield going to miss a few weeks at least. So I say if Jordan Whitehead is available,
pick him up.
Might be just in a little bit more shallower leagues. He's 11% rostered in Yahoo redraft leagues as of now. Now, I know if you play in a deep IDP league, this guy is not available, but because he's only rostered 19% of Yahoo redraft leagues, I'm going to mention him, Mr. Buda Baker. If he's somehow available, go pick him up.
Pick him up.
16 points in week 1, 23 points in week 2, 8 solo tackles in week 2. That's what we like out of our safeties. Here's another cornerback, but someone who they're going to be getting thrown on a lot. Talking about Christian Benford for the Buffalo Bills. Only 6 points in week 1, but totally killing it versus the Dolphins. He got an interception out there. He also mixed in 7 tackles, 6 of them solo. I think you go pick him up.
Pick them up.
The Bills score a lot and teams are going to be throwing on them a lot. So the cornerbacks have always been like decent-ish point getters fantasy-wise. So they could do a lot worse than Benford. That's for sure. If you need to dive this deep, he is only 1% rostered in Yahoo redraft leagues. I got 3 players to talk about, and then we're going to get out of here. But make sure that you subscribe if you have not already. We're bringing the IDP heat week after week. I'll be your biggest IDP resource of this season, hands down. No other YouTuber brings the IDP heat like I do. So appreciate you new people who found the video and followed and subscribed. Appreciate you. Last 3. Here we go. Alontae Taylor, Man, woo, he gets a lot of tackles. Yes, he does. And last week he had 3 sacks. Didn't mix any sacks in this week because, yeah, cornerbacks out there getting sacks, that's never going to be the norm. But he did mix in a lot of tackles, 8 solos to be exact. And he mixed in 2 tackles for loss as well. So even though he's not getting sacks, they're still getting him behind the line of scrimmage as well. And he had 21 points. That is awesome. That is awesome. 21 points. Played a bunch of snaps, pretty much all of them. 94% of snaps to be exact this week. And that was a big jump up after his game last week where he played 78% of snaps. So that is the kind of trajectory that we want out of our IDP players. So Alante Taylor.
Pick him up.
Let's get him. Only 6% rostered in Yahoo redraft leagues. Same team. We're talking about Paulson Adebo. Man, this guy's been on fire. This guy's been on fire as well. Their top 2 corners are Alante Taylor, Adebo, as far as who's getting the most like snaps like out there. He got 96% of the snaps this week. Last week, he has 5 total tackles. This week, he has 4 total tackles, but also mixed in an INT. And the way that the Saints have been playing, I really feel like teams are going to have to throw on them a lot more. And so that's going to mean more tackles, more opportunities for their corners who get the most snaps out there. So Adebo, go pick him up.
Pick him up.
We've made it all the way to the end of the video. Hit subscribe if you have not. The last guy we're talking about here is Mr. Damar Hamlin. Oh, yeah, he had 100% of snaps in week 1, only had 6 points, not the best. In week 2, he has 92% of snaps, but I think that's just because they were winning so much that they pulled Hamlin and Rapp for the backups. But yeah, Hamlin, he killed it in this game against the Dolphins. Everybody killed it. But he had 10 total tackles. He had 8 solos, 1 tackle for loss. Yeah, Hamlin, I feel like the way that they are going to be just beating up on people, the teams are going to have to throw on them a lot. They're getting him all over the place as far as like getting up in the box randomly, or at least getting up there to cover the running backs here and there. Yeah, I like him. I like him a lot. So did the Bills. He's going to keep getting tackles. He got 20 points in week 2, and he's got Jacksonville, Baltimore, and Houston coming over the next couple weeks. So those should be good IDP games for their safety. So Damar Hamlin,
pick him up.
If you did not check out any other waiver wire videos that I dropped, I also dropped the defense and special teams if you guys play, and then all of the offensive positions. So go check those out. Go click on them. Go give them a watch. Go hit the like button. Go leave comments on all these videos. Leave a comment here as well. And remember, I'm bringing the IDP heat, so make sure you guys subscribe, hit the notifications, and if you want to watch one of the other waiver wire videos, they're popping up right now. Just click it, click it, click it, click it, click it, click it.